Hello, everybody. This is Bill Schlund. We are going to be covering release management in Onshape. So first of all, let's take a look at the workflow that we have for Onshape. We can see that this is a built-in workflow. Everything that we start creating or bring into Onshape is considered work in process or in progress. And then going through the workflow, we can send that through to somebody for approval. They can either approve or reject that. And that's kind of the workflow. If it is released, we'll see a little triangle after the component or the assembly indicating back to the user that it is released. If it's rejected, we'll see a different type of unfilled in icon after that. In addition to this, there's also another capability built into Onshape, which is automatic part numbering. So in this case, we can set different prefixes depending on if we're working with parts or assemblies, drawings, or files, and then how many integers that includes, and then the automatic part numbering system kicks in and generates the next available part number. So we'll be using that today as well. So let's take a look at our theme part that we're going to be working with today. This is an assembly. It's pretty straightforward, not made up of a lot of parts. You know, we have a couple of these little covers here. We have a cover down here, and then a top and a bottom for our housing. In addition to that, I also have the ability to look inside, and we see that I've added another component inside of here. It's a pump, and the pump is released. We can see that over here in the tree, that this particular pump housing is a released housing, as we saw in the release workflow. We can see if it has a triangle after it, that is a released part. I thought I'd include that as well, just so we can see how Onshape deals with released components if we go and make them part of another assembly that we're going to release. So like I said, we have these initial parts right here. I'm going to add a little more interest to it, I guess, a little bit. And I'll say, let's also create a drawing for this. So I'm just going to pop up a couple of views on here using a template. And this will put our assembly, our current assembly here. And then what we're going to do, let's take this guy. We'll kind of change his display. We'll also come over here. Let's make the size of these maybe just a little bit bigger. There we go. And also, since this was in millimeters when I created, I'm going to go and set our units for our drawing in millimeters as well. So we can kind of move some things around a little bit. And maybe to kind of add a little interest to it, we'll maybe create a dimension right here, and then maybe a dimension, we could say from this down to the bottom of the feet. Another thing I'm going to add is a bill of material. So this will include all the components that we're currently working with right now. And we can see those right here as they're displayed. One of the things that I'll do is, let's look at the assembly for a second. I'm going to go in and take a look at the bill of material here. I'm going to get rid of a column and then maybe add a different column, maybe the name of the component. We can take the column and move it over, and maybe move our quantity over. So the bill of material that we see here is the one that we'll see in the drawing. The thing is, you'll notice that the pump housing has a part number associated with it. And that happens when we go through and release a product. It will ask, it needs a part number, and that is the unique name of it. I could have 500 different pump housings out there, and Onshape's perfectly happy with that. But once it gets a part number, that's when it's unique. That is the unique name to it. So we can see our initial bill of material here. So going back to our drawing real quickly, I'll just kind of update that, and we'll see that our columns over here will change a little bit, and indicating that we can see the different names of the components here. Let's maybe move it this way. So now that we have this kind of set up, and actually let's go in and put a revision block in here as well. And for this, I could just give it a name. We could say just our initial design, I guess. And we can see that we're currently going to be working, when we do release this, it'll be revision A. But let's go through the work of releasing this, and we'll see how that works. So I could just right mouse button here and say, let's release this. So I'm grabbing the drawing, and when I grab the drawing, of course, it's going to grab the things that are in the drawing, which would be the assembly and all the components that we see here. You'll notice it also has grabbed the pump, which is already released, and it's indicating back to me it is released at a version A, and it's going to continue to use that. It's going to use its existing name and use that in our release of this assembly. Now over here, as I mentioned before, in order to release something, you notice there can be no releasing yet. It has to generate some part numbers. I can type them in. Again, they have to be unique, or I can use the automatic part numbering system. I select on that, and it automatically associates and adds part numbers, unique part numbers to the components and the drawings and the other files that we might have in here as well. So I'm going to give this release, we'll just call it like ECR-382, which is the name of the drawing. Now that I have that all created, I can go and assign some approvers that I want to approve this. Could be one or several people. I can also have observers, so people are notified that something is being released or it has been released. In this case, I'm just going to do it myself just for the expediency of it. I'm just going to say, let's release these components. Again, they're all going to be released under version A. So I'll say release. So it says the action ECR 382 is done. One of the things that's just happened here is my phone has just vibrated, so I've got an email indicating back to me that this component has been released. And we can also see up here in our revision block is that the initial design was released today by me. And again, then the next revision that we're going to work on would be revision B. So let's go back and take a look at our component, and we'll do some changes to it. So I'm going to go back to the Part Studio, and we're going to make some changes to some of these components and maybe add some other things as well. So let's start off and say, let's create some geometry here, and we'll flip the direction, and we'll say, go up to next. So it's basically we're building in a pad at the top of this. So we've added that. Another thing I'm going to do, let's put in some rounds, I guess. Just pick some of the edges here. So I'm just kind of finishing up this design a little bit. One of the things too is some people, when they're making some more dramatic type changes to something, rather than just kind of minor changes, they want it to be a whole different part number, or they want to do a save as. And we can do that in Onshape. I can come over here and just say copy workspace. That's the Onshape way of doing save as, but that's kind of old school, the way that Onshape works. It's actually a lot better not to do things like that, although you can. But I'll show you some of the advantages of just staying in the same design. So I'm going to take this top face initially, and let's say we'll extrude this up and maybe make another component out of this. We'll say this is a new part. And maybe add a, I don't know, we'll put a round on the top, I guess, to finish him off a little bit. Something like that. So we've added another part. We can see that that's been added down here. It's called part number 5. Again, I can rename that to, cap or something like that. I'm going to turn this guy off for a second. It really doesn't make sense to have a cap here unless we have an opening that it's covering. So I'm just going to go here and say, let's just go and create this guy, sketch on this face, and let's do an offset of this. Just kind of drag it this way. Maybe something like that. And we can extrude that. We'll say remove material. So now we do have a cutout in our part that the cap would be covering. In addition to this, let's take our cover here. And again, I'll say let's modify one of these parts. So I'm going to sketch on this one. And we'll say let's just grab some of these Let's grab that and then punch a hole in this. So what I'm doing is I'm making changes to some of the parts and not to others. And then we'll kind of see how Onshape takes a look at those things. So here we've modified this end part. We've modified the top part. We've added and created a new part. The main housing itself has not changed at all. And if we go back here to our assembly, this cover plate has not changed, and there's two of those. You'll notice our top part, our cap is not here because originally when I made the assembly, it wasn't there. Easy enough to put in. I can just say, let's bring in our cap, and then now he is placed there. So going back to our drawing, we'll go back, take a look at it here. We're looking at the release version A of this drawing. You'll notice that the little button up here is saying update your drawing. There are changes. So I'm going to say, let's update that. And what we'll see is those changes have taken place. We've got another part, our cap part has been added here. You notice he doesn't have a part number down here because it hasn't been released yet. But now we can see the new representation of our version B assembly when we go to release that. And we can see the part numbers here that have been created for the different components. And those are all version A part numbers. So let's go and release this drawing. So I'm going to go in here and say release. Now remember, like I said before, some people want to do a save as and make a whole different part numbers and things like that. But let's go and take a look at what Onshape does here. So it sees that certain parts have not changed. The main housing never changed. I didn't do anything to it. So it says items geometry has not changed. Now we can stick with the old part number and bump it up to revision B, but I'm going to say let's keep it at revision A. So I just hit the little button here, and it's just basically saying use the last released version of this part as our current version in this release. So it makes it really simple for us to do things there. You notice that our pump housing is still the same. It is released. And I'm going to do the same with the other, this little orange cap. Remember, there are two of those. Those haven't changed either. So I'm going to revert back to their released version or version A. And we'll see that Onshape then indicates that they are released. We're using released versions in this overall release. Now, again, it's taking in the old part numbers, and they're going to become version B. But again, some people say, well, this is a big change. So we want this to be a different part number. So I can just backspace over this, say delete that, and now I can put in the next available part number. So this is 388. Maybe the assembly needs to get a new part number as well. So I'll do that. And then finally, let's, our new part down here that we added, that cap part, he automatically will get assigned a number as well. And then let's say the end cover here, we'll give him a new part number. But again, then maybe for the main housing cover where we did put a hole in it, we're just going to keep the same part number, all right, just to be different. But we can reassign part numbers. Again, they all are unique. And then we can go and say this one would be maybe a different ECR. And this would be 388. And again, we can assign approvers and observers. I'm just going to release it here. But as you can see, is that we can generate new part numbers for parts if they are significantly different. If that's how we do that in our company, maybe we just keep the same part number. It's just this is what version A looks like. This is what B looks like. You have the flexibility to do what you need to do. But again, we're going to say, let's release this. We can see the 388 has been released. And again, my phone is vibrating, telling me that the release has been taken place. You notice that now we can see version B up here and the date. And again, the next one we would make would be version C. Now, I mentioned before that doing things this way has more advantage than to doing a bunch of save ases. And you're going to have all these little bits of information all over the place, which is why people have data management systems. Data management is built into Onshape here. But the thing is that there's some advantages for keeping this all together. If I had done a save as and I go to release a part, it would just put a notice before that part and just say this has been released if it was a previously released part from another document, right? Because I did a save as, and it's just letting me know that this was actually a released part in a different document, not the one that I'm currently in. So there's all kinds of messages given to the user when we're going in and working and releasing with parts. And one of the things you'll notice is that we have a watermark here and it's saying in progress. And it's like, well, didn't you just release it? I did. But the thing is that we can kind of take a look at its history. And this is where I mean we can kind of come in with the advantages of Onshape. So if I wanted to look at release version A, right, the first one we did, I just click on that in the history tree and it brings up the drawing for release A. And so we can see here's version A, our initial design. It has all the same part numbers and things that it originally had. And then if I want to, I could just go in and say, let's print this out to maybe a PDF or something like that. Create a PDF. One of the things else you'll notice is that watermark is gone, right? Because this is the released drawing. So now this is what we would send to manufacturing, to a customer, to purchasing, or whoever. If I wanted to see what version B looks like, I just click on that and it shows me version B. So the nice thing about keeping everything in the same workspace, in the same part studio, is that we can go through and look at the different histories and throughout the evolution of this particular product, and it's all just one-stop shopping, right? I don't have to call up the saved as version and look at that version, what it looks like. I can keep them all here. It makes this release workflow really easy to work with, and it gives us a lot of control and access to the things that we do release. But that's really kind of the highlights of what I wanted to